that's what reckoning sounds like. You want it to stop, but it just keeps coming.
You're listening to
Path of the Jedi
with your host, Ronnie Cruz.
All right, welcome to Path of the Jedi, the podcast where Star Wars meets personal development. My name is Ronnie Cruz, your host for this wearied adventure. Wearied for these following reasons. Well, first of all, it's super late in the evening, and it's much, much later in the day than I normally would record these episodes. But today was one of those days. It just got away from me, and well, it was an incredibly packed day also, right? So that's another reason why I'm pretty tired. We had some technicians up here at the house today. Okay, so if you're brand new to the show, I live in a very, very remote area. I'm in a log cabin in the middle of the North Carolina mountains, really middle of nowhere. So my sister and I thought we would never get high-speed internet, and that wasn't going to happen because we live too far away from everything. There's no infrastructure out here other than like electricity, right? And that sometimes isn't reliable either. And so like the last thing on our minds was that we would get high-speed internet. But a few weeks ago, it was offered. Like we got offered the option of opting into having fiber installed in our house, right? And so yeah, of course we're going to take it because our internet is absolutely ridiculous. Like it's super, super slow. I'll jump at the chance of having a system or an internet that's at least half the speed of what normal people in civilization have. And so when that opportunity came up, we took it. And so the technicians were here today working on the property all day long to install fiber. And so I'm very, very pleased that my sister and I are both very pleased that we are now in the 21st century when it comes to high speed internet. However, that meant that today was incredibly hectic with the technicians at the property and in the house and around the house. The dogs were really a little bit difficult to wrangle, and then on top of that, just my normal day-to-day work, right? Like my morning workout. I have a lot of work to do, physical labor around the mountain, because I got to get things ready. One last go and one last pass at kind of tidying things up, and cutting down grass and tending to the vineyard before winter sets in, and then on top of that, the work that I have to do for this show, Path of the Jedi, as well as my other show, my other podcast, Path of the Network Marketer, that I just released last month, and that's a new episode every day right now, for the next for 100 days. I'm on day 40, so I'm like in the mid 40s. So that amount of workload on top of everything else. So then on top of that, of course, I have my network marketing business, and there's just been a lot. Today was a lot. But overall, for the last, I would say about last 2 months, it's been a lot, and I haven't really had too much of a break, and so yeah, by this, and I get it. This is just one of the seasons I'm in right now. I'm taking on some new things and learning and teaching myself some new skills, and it's requiring a lot of upfront energy, as anything that you do. Anytime you undertake a new adventure, that always happens. So I know it's just the season, but it is a tiring one, and I am feeling very weary at the end of this very long day. The other reason why I chose the word wearied was I feel like it really, that this is the kind of feeling I get from this show, Andor, especially in episode 3, because it never ends, right? The from episode 1 to episode 3, it's just like he's always on the run, and of course, building on top of what we talked about last week, our discussion was with all the lies and how difficult a burden that is to carry and to keep up. It's just an exhausting life that Cassian has, and when we factor in the third episode of the show, we see that he really hasn't had any respite from this lifestyle, right? By the when we're introduced to him when he's a kid, I mean, obviously there's something amiss with the village because there's only children, right? Like there's only youth. There's no full grown adults, mature adults. So that already to me says that it's a pretty stressful existence because they're having to survive without any adults. And then on top of that, you've got the mining corporation that's on their planet Canary that's kind of strip mining the entire planet of all its resources. And then as we see in as those flashbacks progress, we notice that like these kids seem to have been doing this for a little while now. I mean, if you look at their clothing, and this is just my kind of headcanon and theory, but for me, I feel like when I look at the clothing of the children in that village, in Cassian's village and Cassian's tribe, I feel like it's clothing that's been scavenged from crash sites or abandoned mining sites, or whatever the situation is. And for me, again, in my headcanon, I'm thinking, well, the kids would naturally have had to be scavengers or at least adapt without adults, without the adult supervision, without the adult know-how. They're kind of having to figure things out on their own, and scavenging is naturally, I think, one of those things that they would do as children to survive. And so, like, who knows how long this village and these kids have been doing this. I mean, it seems like they've been doing it for a long time. With Cassian's story in particular, like it continues on in this kind of like survival mode and always on the run, always like just always there's always some kind of conflict, it seems. And when we see the flashback scenes in this third episode. By the way, sorry, I really just started going off into the topic here. If you haven't watched the show yet, understand that there will be spoilers in my analysis and in our discussions. I mean, the show Andor has been out for a little while now. It's not done yet. We are a few episodes behind, but I would hate for any of the show to be spoiled if you haven't seen it yet. If that's a thing for you, I hate having spoilers. I hate knowing what's going to happen before I actually see anything. So that's just I wanted to give you a warning. Go watch the show. Stop the podcast. Go watch Andor, at least up to part 3, episode 3, and then you can come back and finish off this week's episode of Path of the Jedi. Okay, that said, in the flashbacks that we see of Cassian in this third episode of the show, we see, okay, so it seems like they live kind of a pretty stressful life as kids, right? A village of only kids. They're it's a struggle, I guess, to survive, and they had to scavenge, and they always encounter crashed ships, and I'm sure that they encounter people with force, right? Like the occupiers of the planet, the mining companies, and the guards, and the imperial presence. I'm sure in order to kind of to get the adults from the village, right? Like they have to get again, that's my guess in my headcanon. I feel like they periodically have to defend themselves against the corporation from abducting eligible workers, right? Workers that are old enough and strong enough and big enough, grown enough to work the mine. So it seems to me like their existence on Canary is very full of turmoil and conflict and very stressful, and it's one of always fighting for survival. The flashbacks then continue and show us how Cassian gets taken off the planet, and even this was a very stressful situation for Cassian. It was a situation of survival. He gets taken not of his own volition, not of his own free will, by these foreigners who aren't even from the planet. There's a big language barrier, and he's given like a sleeping pill or a sleeping what is it? What is the thing they do in spy movies where you put it on the handkerchief? You know what I mean, right? They put him to sleep basically in order to take him out of the situation in that crash shuttle. And really, like, I get it. Like, it was well intentioned, but it was still against his will, and he still really had no choice in abandoning and leaving the only existence that he knew up to that point. So again, and like he's getting pulled and thrust into just this constant, situations of survival, right? And getting taken by Marva in that scene. He gets pulled into Marva's world, who we don't really know that much about Marva's world, but it doesn't seem entirely on the up and up, right? Like it seems like they're some kind of smugglers, scrappers for sure. I mean, they're scavenging the crash site for anything that they can sell. So scavengers slash smugglers. It's definitely I think on the it's outside of the law, let's say that imperial law anyways, because we see when when Cassian in his adult life, all of his entire existence seems to be outside of the law, right? Like they give they've given false histories, false, planet of origin and things like that for Cassian's background. And why would they do that if they didn't have anything to hide, if they weren't outside of the law? So he just, without any real choice, I think he keeps getting pulled into these deeper and deeper levels of like stressful survival situations, right? This lifestyle of always having to kind of gnaw and claw your way to survive, right? To survive, not even just to get by, but to survive. And then on top of that, like he's on these like covert missions to find, I think his sister is what he was looking for in that first episode of the show. So a lot of dark dealings. I mean, Cassian has a criminal record, and then in this episode, when he finally meets Luthen Rael, Stellan Skarsgård's character, Luthen pulls him into his world, right? Pulls him into his deeper level of intrigue and lies and secrets, right? Because Luthen obviously, like he's kind of this mysterious stranger that's coming in from out of town, off planet, and he knows so much about Cassian. Like how do you know so much about Cassian? So clearly there's a lot more going on with Luthen Rael than he's letting up, and obviously it's because he's been in this life in this world of intrigue for quite some time, right? Quite some time. And through no volition of his own, again, Cassian gets pulled into Luthen's world because Luthen was his only means of escaping the guards, the Pre-Mor guards that were after him, that were going to persecute him for the murders of the two guards in the first episode. So we see Cassian getting pulled deeper and deeper into crazier and crazier and more stressful situations. And it just seems like he never has any rest. He never has any respite from this, right? When he sleeps, it's even a stressful sleep because he's dreaming about his past. He's dreaming about, the stress from his childhood. By the time we see Cassian in Rogue One, it seems like he's at the end of his rope. Like he's reached like he's at this precipice of completely, again, losing himself to the world and forgetting who he really is. And we see him incredibly angry at everything. We see him really, really short-tempered and again, like it's like he's forgotten his true essence. He's forgotten. He's lost himself to this crazy world that he's gotten pulled into, and like having this entire swath. Almost his entire life. We get kind of this picture of Cassian's entire life. For me, if I was in that situation, I would be weary too. I would definitely. Again, I think it really paints a clearer picture as to why Cassian is the way he is, why he is who he is by the time we see him in Rogue One, knowing what he's gone through in just these first 3 episodes. Obviously, we're going to see more as the show progresses, but it's exhausting. it's so tiring, and that's why for me it's a very, very wearied adventure. Um, yeah, that was a long explanation as to why I chose that particular word to describe today's adventure. But yeah, I mean, it covered a lot of what I wanted to talk about in this first half of the show. Now, one thing, well, one theme that I really, really latched onto, one line that I latched onto happened, I think, somewhere halfway in this episode, about the midway point or so, at least the second half of the show. Marva was being held captive in her own home by the Primor guards who were looking for Cassian. Right, they're after Cassian. They've flown to this planet, and forgive me, for the life of me, I always forget the name of the planet that they're currently on. But the Primor guards have come to take him, come to persecute him for the murders of the two guards in episode 1. Obviously, he's on the lam, he's on the run, he's hiding and trying to escape from the guards. But they go to their house, where Marva is, and they put two guards with her, to make sure that, in case Cassian comes back or communicates with her. At one point, while they're keeping guard of Marva, the entire village, well, not village, but the entire town, right, the entire locale where they are, which, by the way, really, really, like, they did a helicopter shot over the city, and I was very much reminded of the favelas, or I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, favelas, in Brazil. Like the shanty towns that kind of are governed and have their own rule of law within that community, right? Like, even police sometimes, at least I've heard. I've never been there myself. I don't have any first-hand experience, only a cursory kind of, from movies and stuff I've seen on TV. But like I've heard or believe that police even sometimes are hesitant to go into these favelas because of the because it's just rough, right? And they have their own ways of doing things in these shanty cities. They're not just villages, they're not just towns. They're like massive cities that are all shanties. It's these ghettos. And so this city that Cassian and Marva and the rest of what we've seen so far in the show very much reminds me of that. And so when we get to this part of the episode where Marva is being held captive in her own home, what happens is the townsfolk start sounding the alarm. It's like this local kind of getting the word out, and it's a call to action, and they're just banging on like pipes and old hubcaps or whatever they are, right? Like, and it just sends this signal all across town, and they can hear it. It's pretty deafening. And the Primor guards are like, what the heck is that? Like, what's going on? And this line from Marva is absolutely incredible. She says, "That's what reckoning sounds like. You want it to stop, but it just keeps coming," right? It just keeps coming. I absolutely love that line for so many reasons. Again, if we're talking about just this crazy life that Cassian is in, and really, building on top of last week's Path of the Jedi, when we're talking about lies, yeah, that stuff catches up to you, right? That stuff definitely catches up to you. There is a reckoning that's happening, not just really in this show, but in this time frame, in this time period of Star Wars. The reckoning is happening for sure with the Empire, and just the atrocities that they're inflicting all over the galaxy. The people that they're oppressing and taking advantage of. They're the people and the planets they're abusing. There's going to be a reckoning for that, for sure. And you want it to stop, but it just keeps coming. And we see, I think, with this particular show, Andor, things are starting to kind of unravel. You can't stop it. If you look at the character of Cyril Karn, who has taken it upon himself to go after Cassian in the first place, against orders, mind you, right? Against orders. He was ordered to sweep it under the rug and just let it go, and everything will be fine, which, I really believe that it would have. Cyril decided to take it upon himself to go after Cassian and to capture him and put him on trial. Pretty much convict him and persecute him for the murder of the two guards. he does this without authorization. His team doesn't know that it's without authorization. So that lie, it's a reckoning that will just keep coming, whether he likes it or not. And it definitely comes in this episode, right? It blows up. It completely blows up in Cyril's face. Cassian gets away, and it's a complete disaster for his team. And now, of course, we'll see in the next episode what happens. But he's gonna eventually have to go back and take responsibility, take ownership of this huge debacle. What other reckonings, right? Like there's lots of reckonings that's happening. Obviously with Cassian, there's lots of reckonings. I mean, with the two guards that he killed. I mean, he was put in a tough situation. The first kill, the first murder was accidental, but not the second one, right? Not the second one. So these things will always catch up to you, right? Like the lies, the secrets, the hiding, all this stuff that Cassian has been through. Again, like he was kind of thrust into this situation. Like we did talk about what will people do when forced, right? Like when caught in between, when caught in a situation not of their doing, what are people willing to do to survive? And Cassian, he's willing to do a lot. Like his village, his the other children in his village on his home planet. Sorry, I just had a brain fart. Completely forgot what the name of the home planet was. It happens. It's late. But on his own planet, the village that he was with, the kids were, they were willing to do some pretty extreme things to survive, right? Like when they're caught in a hard place, people will be willing to do a lot of things, and murder and killing people was and is one of those things that the kids have done in the village. I mean, again, their clothes are scavenged, so who knows what they've had to do to scavenge those clothes. I mean, we did see them kill one of the I don't know, one of the crew from that crashed ship. So like he's already of this mindset, and he gets pulled further and deeper into worlds that aren't necessarily, again, on the up and up. And so, well, he gets pulled into kind of rougher and rougher situations, put into more difficult situations. And of course, what's he going to do? He's going to survive, because that's what he knows, right? That's what he knows. Unfortunately, that eventually that reckoning comes. It came in the form of Cyril Karn coming after him like a rabid dog. And in Rogue One, if we just fast forward to the movie, it comes in the form of him, really losing himself, just kind of like forgetting his again, I say this a lot, his essence, like who he is, losing himself to that dark underworld of just getting the job done and completing the mission at all cost. Everything has a cost, man. Everything has a cost. And for me, it screams of karmic law, right? Karmic law. One of the things that I think is amazing about that particular quote from Marva is that, when she says you wanted to stop but it keeps coming, yes, she was speaking, literally about the villagers and the townsfolk banging on pots and pans and pipes and hubcaps, but she was also talking figuratively, not just about like the actual reckoning itself, like karma coming back to bite you in the ass, but I think really you want that sound. The sound of reckoning is what she's talking about, not the reckoning itself. And to me, the sound of reckoning that you want to stop but just keeps coming is your conscience, right? It's your conscience. I think that's what's really awesome about this particular episode, because it's a lesson in listening to your conscience, right? And if your conscience is screaming, it's not going to stop. Well, number one, if it's screaming, it's telling you that what you're about to do or have done, you probably shouldn't have in the first place. And again, I'm not going to, make any kind of moral judgments on specific things that you've done or haven't done. But if your conscience is screaming at you, if it's your conscience is making a sound, right, that's the sound of reckoning, and it's not going to stop, right? It just keeps coming until you rectify the situation, or you decide not to do it, right? You decide not to do that thing. And so it's a I mean, it's a great lesson. It's a great lesson. Had these characters in this episode and in this show use their conscience or listen to their conscience, I don't think they would necessarily be in the situation that they're in. The only one, actually, now that I think of it, and it's great that this particular line came from Marva, because she is the only one that actually used her conscience. Yes, she did remove Cassian with against his will. She took him out of away from his homeland. Without his say so, but she did so in good conscience, right? She did so selflessly. She did so to keep him safe and to keep him from getting killed by whatever imperial forces were on their way, right? So her intentions were good. And I think that's really where I want to land today. How do you make sure that reckonings don't come back to bite you in the ass, right? How do you make sure, your conscience doesn't continue haunting you for the rest of your time? Well, the guidance system, of course, number one is your conscience. So listen to your conscience. It's again, well, I don't know if I've said this on this show, but unless you're like a sociopath or a psychopath, your conscience is a good measure of whether or not what you're doing is forthright. If whether or not what you're doing, what you're about to do or have done, is something that you should or shouldn't. So listen to your conscience. It's a good guide. I like to really encourage people to trust their instinct, trust their gut and intuition. And then as a rule of thumb, from karmic law, is just act with good intentions, right? Act with good intentions. Again, it's hard to assign, moral wrong or right, or what's good or bad. But if you have good intentions, I think that's a good place to start. And then the next step would be to add onto that. The next layer is act selflessly, right? Act with altruism. Act for the benefit of the other person. Again, Marva did so beautifully. She didn't have to take Cassian with him, and she might have had an easier go at it, not having to raise a child and care for a child that she didn't need, especially in the life that she seemed to be leading. But she acted with good intention for his benefit, less her own, right? So act with good intention and act as selflessly as possible when you can, and really the last thing is just be kind. Just be kind. If we look at the characters in this show who have not followed those three tenets, we see it always coming back to bite them in the ass. And obviously, again, the show isn't done, but of the individuals that did not follow or do not follow those guiding principles that I just laid out for you, it didn't end well. It didn't end well. At the very least, their consciences weren't clear, and that's that might be the most difficult part of transgressions and of lies and of cheating and deceit, is that your conscience is something that you can't escape, just like the sounds of these reckonings that Marva was talking about. So again, act with good intention. Act selflessly, and I think most important to add on top of that is just to be kind. All right, well, that's going to do it for today's episode. What do you guys think? Wow, I was actually, that was pretty succinct. I'm really, really satisfied with that. That was done in one take. I mean, it was the second take, but it was done in one take nonetheless, which is not easy to do, and I don't often do because I have lots of brain farts, especially this time of night. But it was done in one take, so I'm giving myself a pat on the back for that one. But what do you guys think of the topic, right? Karmic law, listening to your conscience, the reckoning. You want it to stop, but it just keeps coming, right? And so these are great lessons that the show so far in just 3 episodes is teaching us. It's giving us lessons on life and how to live life, so that you don't have to carry these heavy burdens, so that you don't have to run away from the reckoning, right? Because again, it always comes back. It always comes back to haunt you. I mean, if you think about it's classic story, right? It's like you look at A Christmas Carol. That's a classic tale of the reckoning coming back. And I was going to say Scrooge McDuck. Scrooge McDuck. Showing my age. Ebenezer Scrooge. He goes through this entire journey, but really, for me, it's his conscience getting the better of him, telling him that he should live a better life. So it's an age old story, right? It's an age old theme that I think, just in this particular episode, it's what for me, what this episode 3 of Andor really evokes. When you hear a line like "That's what reckoning sounds like," you want it to stop, but it just keeps coming. Another one, so another example, Telltale Heart. For those of you guys who are familiar with Edgar Allan Poe, that's a reckoning. You want it to stop, but it just keeps coming. This beating in his ear. It's not so much that the heart is still beating under the floorboards. It's his conscience. So anyways, I'm enjoying this show. And actually, from the little I've seen, because I try not to get on social feeds, especially Twitter, when there's a new show, because I don't want any spoilers. As far as I've read and seen on the social feeds, this show is really, really being well received. So I can see why. I can understand why. I've loved all the shows, but I'm glad this one is being heard and being seen. Because it's a good one. There's a lot of meat to it, and again, with this 3rd episode of the show of Andor, there's really a lot of great lessons on how to live life. So let me know what you guys think. Know what you guys think. Of course, you can hit me up on the socials. I do still answer and reply. I just don't scroll the feed. So you can find us on Facebook or Twitter. It's POTJ Podcast, and of course, you can send us an email, direct email. It's info@pathofthejedi.com. You can put the title of this particular episode in the subject heading and just let me know what you think. I'd love to read your messages out here on the show. Read them aloud here on the show. Or actually, even if you want to send me an MP3, I would love that as well. I'll play your MP3 on the show. That would be a lot of fun. I just want to know what you guys think and want to hear your side of the story and what you took away from episode 3 of Andor. It's a lot of fun, and I think if the more discussion we have, the more fun it gets. So again, it's POTJ Podcast on Twitter and Facebook, and info@pathofthejedi.com to send us an email. All right, so now it's time for this week's shout out. This week's shout out goes to, I'm going to give a shout out to somebody I've given a shout out to probably a handful of times already on this show, but she definitely merits it and deserves it, especially given what we've been through in the last few months. I want to give a shout out to my sister, Rowena Cruz in the house. It's been difficult, to say the least, right? Like we've, if you guys go back a couple of weeks, a couple of months now, actually, it just feels like yesterday still and very fresh. We lost one of our dogs. He was old, naturally. Dogs, unfortunately, don't have as long a lifespan as humans, but we love them almost, I would say as much. And our dog, Mambo, he was 16. Almost 16, 15 and a half, and he passed away, not unexpectedly, but unexpectedly, right? It was just like one of those kind of just random afternoons that you don't think that this is going to be the afternoon, and it was just such a difficult day, and bouncing back from that has been incredibly hard for the both of us, and I'm sure for her, like that was her baby, right? That was her boy. and I know it's tough. Like, we live at home, we work from home, so we're home all the time with our dogs, and to not have, to be missing one of their presence is incredibly difficult, especially given how long he was with us, how old, he got to be 15 and a half. That's a long time for a dog. It's a long time for humans, right? To be a part of our lives for 15 years. And so I know, like my sister has had a lot on her plate with work and with new things that's happening in the business, our network marketing business, and then to juggle maintaining the home front and taking care of our other 4 dogs. It's a lot to handle. As I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, I'm feeling pretty weary, with everything that we're kind of juggling. So I can only imagine what she's dealing with, but she does so very well. She does so in stride. I mean, hell, she puts up with me every day, right? She puts up with my bullshit and shenanigans every day, and all the baggage that I bring to the table, and that alone is a lot. And then to have to deal with her own, her own kind of experience right now. So I just got to give her a shout out, celebrate her, lift her up. If you know her, a lot of my listeners, a lot of you guys know her personally. Just reach out. I mean, not that we're miserable or incredibly unhappy, but again, it's been a wearied adventure these handful of months. So I'm sure she would appreciate you guys just saying hello and I mean, not even talking about anything other than to say hi and greet her well and to celebrate her and give her a shout out. So yeah, I know she listens to this show. She's not always on top and current with the episodes, but I know she's going to hear this and the shout outs for her because of everything that she does, everything that she continues to do, everything that she's had to do. So sis Rowena Cruz, this week's shout out goes to you. All right, well, that's going to do it for today's episode, guys. That's pretty much it. Some new things on the podcast. Well, as far as just like technical format, there are footers now. So, I'm going to do my best to leave resources and links in the description footer of each episode. So make sure to check that. One of the ones that I've left there for today's episode is if you want to start podcasting, click the link and get your own BUZZSPROUT account. Yes, it would help me out. Of course, I am an affiliate now of BUZZSPROUT. You would be helping the show. You're also going to get a $20 Amazon gift card for helping me out and starting your own BUZZSPROUT account. That's only if you want to start your own podcast. I do love BUZZSPROUT. It's an incredible service. It's so good, guys. I mean, I have 2 podcasts now on that platform, on that hosting platform. So go check it out. And if you're ready to start podcasting, actually, you can reach out to me. And you can also check out my other podcast called Path of the Network Marketer. I just finished a 4-part series on how to start a podcast as simply and as quickly as possible. So go check that out. I'll leave that actually in the footer as well, so you guys can check out the episodes if you are interested in starting your own podcast. Okay, so now this is for real it. Thank you again for tuning in. It's been a fun adventure so far with Andor. Wearied or not, I'm really, really enjoying, examining and analyzing the show. There's a lot to really dig into. So I appreciate you guys always supporting and tuning in. If you like the show, please, by all means, leave us a rating and a review if that's available on the particular platform that you're listening on. I would... I'd appreciate it. It helps us get discovered, and also for sure share the show. We have a lot of we have a circle of Twitter friends that are always kind of circulating and passing on the show to their Twitter sphere. So I appreciate all that help. But yeah, any help that you'd be willing to give, I would love it. But other than that, just make sure you tune in and catch us next week with a fresh new episode of Andor, episode 3. So until then, guys, be well, be safe, and may the Force be with you.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company nor Lucasfilm Limited and is intended for entertainment, educational, and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names and sounds and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is intellectual property of Path of the Jedi unless otherwise indicated.